Hey everybody, this is Darren Van Dam and you are watching Flick Connection, the show that helps you get more out of movies, and today I want to tell you about 20, well actually more than 20, really great sci-fi movies you can currently watch on Amazon Prime. So it has been a while since I've done an Amazon Prime list, but there are a ton of great sci-fi movies currently available. This is going to be a great video for people who aren't sure if Amazon Prime is worth the money, or if you currently have Prime and you have a little trouble finding good titles. These are going to be 20. 10 of them are going to be just the top 10 sci-fi movies, and then my second 10 are going to be throwbacks, all from the 80s. Now, number 10 on the first half of this list is called Infinity Chamber, and I have mentioned this one as it was on Netflix recently. It recently jumped to Amazon Prime. If you ever played the video game Portal, this movie is a lot like it without the portal gun. So it's a very, very low budget movie, not a lot of special effects, but a good story. And if you can look past some of the lower budget elements, it's very, very enjoyable and fairly highbrow. And it's about a guy who wakes up in a prison, in this chamber, and he has to figure out how to get out of it. And it's not just a puzzle or escape the room type of thing, even though it is that. It's way deeper than I thought it was going to be at the beginning, and I ultimately really enjoyed this one. It is a little slow at times, but again, you're dealing with a very, very low budget sci-fi movie, which is why it's all the way back here at number 10, but I do recommend it. Another low budget entry on this list is Rememory with Peter Dinklage. If that name sounds familiar to you, he is the dwarf on Game of Thrones. Really, really fantastic actor, and the interesting thing about his role in Rememory is the character does not need to be a dwarf. There's nothing overly important to the story. They just cast him because he's a good actor, he's recognizable, and he does a great job here. This is kind of like a Black Mirror episode. It takes place in the near future. There's this technology that allows you to recover memories, and using it does not help the main characters in this story out the way they hope it should. That's basically it, but it does play out very well. Naturally, there are twists and things like that in this type of story, but that would be my closest recommendation would be if you like Black Mirror. This is like a 90-minute episode of it. It's not quite as dark as Black Mirror can get, but still very good. Time Lapse is another small indie movie with a little bit more of a budget, a little bit more special effects, and this one is about a time machine. And what you get from the trailers and the clips I'm showing you is this time machine is gigantic. And instead of taking you back in time, this one is able to capture photos and images across time. And so it makes for a familiar but different and interesting time travel setup. I like this one. You're dealing with paradoxes and you sort of are uncovering this mystery. And again, just like Rememory, the people playing with this technology don't have enough respect for it, and so things don't go swimmingly, to say the least. But for a small little sci-fi thing with time travel elements, it's a really great watch. Now, for one on this list that is also a horror movie, Isolation is one that takes place on a farm out in Ireland, and it's one that I've remembered for a long time. It really made an impression and stuck with me, and I've never heard anybody talk about it. I've never seen it anywhere until just recently. This one is dark. Deals with, without giving too much away, deals with parasites and human experimentation, and it starts off dark because you're on a farm, again in Ireland. It's dark and moody, but it's a cattle farm, and so there's already some grim and dark subject matter going on around this cattle farm. And don't get me wrong, I mean, I eat at least 1 or 2 burgers a week, but it's still pretty raw imagery. So stay away from this one if you're super sensitive to just anything grim to do with animals. But obviously, as horror would go, the people in Isolation get it way worse than any of the animals. Another one that's almost horror, even though I don't know that I would really include it on a horror list, is The Girl with All the Gifts, which is based on a book by the same name. This one takes place in a dystopian future, more post-apocalyptic future. As I do have to spoil a little bit because the movie doesn't really want to tell you what you're watching for the first 20 minutes or so, and it can be a little bit dull. But it's a post-apocalypse landscape ravaged by zombies. So this is a zombie movie, and it very much turns into one in the second half. It's very light on the zombies in the first half, yet still very, very interesting. If I didn't tell you this was a zombie movie up front, you probably wouldn't catch it for, again, at least 20 to 30 minutes, maybe longer. However, very good and very different. It doesn't feel like the same zombie movie you've seen over and over again. So if you're kind of over zombies, this might be a good one to watch. If you love them and it's just been a while since you've seen something new and different, this would be a great one to watch as well. One that I personally really like is Daybreakers with Ethan Hawke, Willem Dafoe. In this one, vampires have taken over humanity. There's very few humans left, and vampires have their own civilization. They live in the cities, they ride the subway, they go to work, they have jobs, but there is a blood shortage, and that causes a little bit of a ripple in the vampire world, and then the movie sort of takes off from there. And with this one, you not only get a cool premise, it looks slick, the cinematography's great, and it makes for an interesting story. The way things play out works out very, very well. Again, light on spoilers here, but for something different with vampires and some action and some really pretty stunning visuals, this is a great one to go, and it's certainly the biggest budget one that we've touched on so far. Dog Soldiers is a pretty killer werewolf movie with some gore, some guts, some just and I'll even say the costumes of the werewolves look fake, yet they're cool looking. Like the design of these werewolves is different from what you've seen, and they're pretty wild looking. So I enjoyed that, but it does turn into this like monsters trying to get into the house, defend the house type of thing, and you're in the house with these military guys that are heavily armed, so you get a lot of action in the tail end of this one, yet it's this great little creepy sci-fi horror mashup that I really enjoyed. The only reason I wouldn't really shoehorn this one into horror is because it does focus more on the action and just the violence. There are scary elements, but this one is not like a thing that go bump in the night type of a movie. This is more akin to a zombie movie than just like a straight horror movie.
If anybody has anything to say, now's the time to say it.
My number 3 pick is the oldest one on this portion of the list. It's from the mid-90s, and that's Stargate with Kurt Russell. This one is such a sci-fi classic, I had to include it somewhere on the list, and it spawned 2 spin-off series, but the movie stands on its own really well, and if you've never seen it, if you want to watch sci-fi on Amazon Prime, this is one of the best ones you can go with, but it's about a portal, a wormhole that has opened up that you can travel through. If you've heard of the ancient aliens theory that extraterrestrials built the pyramids, they go to the planet where those aliens would have come from. And so with that, you get very different and interesting visuals. They're in like an Egypt landscape, but there's aliens, and it's cool. But I would imagine most people with any kind of interest have seen it already. My number 2 pick is one of my favorite movies of 2018, possibly my absolute favorite movie of 2018, and that's Annihilation with Natalie Portman. Now this is from the same writer-director as Ex Machina, which is another fantastic sci-fi movie. It is currently available on Netflix, but Annihilation is based on a book, but fairly loosely. And what you get is this extraterrestrial zone that has popped up out of nowhere. They're trying to figure out what this expanding border is. It's very, very highbrow. So much so that when I saw this in the theater, I was kind of shaking my head thinking, now is there something to this, or are they just going so far out there that it's just nonsense made to look like something significant? And as a result, I thought a lot about this movie. In fact, I have a full 20-minute explanation review of everything in the movie. I found that there are so many little hidden details throughout this movie that everything is intentional and there is a clear message. If you can decode it, good for you. I still don't fully understand this movie, but my other video might help you understand it a little bit, so I'll put a link to that in the description. And then my number one pick, I always forget. Let me check my notes. Yeah, it's The Matrix. Kind of a cop-out of a first pick. Hopefully you've seen The Matrix. However, I had to put it at number one because the entire trilogy is currently available on Amazon Prime. Now, the first is the best. It's very watchable on its own. I do not hate the second and third. I think they reached for the brass ring a little bit too much, and they really kind of lost their audience with the other two, and kind of missed what people really loved about the original a little bit. However, they're still worthy. There's still a lot of great elements to the other two. Matrix Reloaded, the second, having really what I consider to be a really impressive car chase sequence. I love that sequence as well as a few others in the movie. And obviously they're all visually beautiful. Some of the themes that follow you through all the way to the final one, like Neo being this messianic figure, I thought that played really well, and they tied a lot of religious iconography into the series really well as well. But that first, The Matrix, it's so good. Even today, it plays out so well. In fact, we included the shootout in the lobby as one of the greatest shootouts of all time in a recent podcast episode. There's a link to that particular episode in the description below as well. So check that out, watch The Matrix, and let's go ahead and move on to the 80s portion of this video. But before we do that, if you like this type of content, definitely click that subscribe button and be sure to click the little bell icon so you get notified when I put new videos out just like this one. My number 10 pick on my 80s list is Molly Ringwald in Space, also known as Space Hunter and Adventure in the Forbidden Zone. So the funny thing about those long titles is that usually indicates they wanted this to be a series or intended it to be a series, and it is not. This movie bombed. It kind of sucks actually, but I like it. It's fun to watch. This crazy, weird sci-fi movie with Molly Ringwald, and it does have redeeming qualities. It's not just an absolute shit show. It's a shit show.
Sounds great.
For instance, recently on my Netflix list, I recommended Turbo Kid, which is a really fun movie. If you liked Turbo Kid, you might like Space Hunter. It's not as wild and crazy and fun as Turbo Kid. It's not as self-aware as Turbo Kid, but it's certainly one of the inspirations for Turbo Kid, 100%. Like, if you have not seen it, and the idea of a Molly Ringwald space adventure gets you the least bit excited, I think you should check it out. I think it's going to be worth the 85 minutes it's going to take to watch it. But moving on, Chopping Mall is exactly what it sounds like. It is a movie about a mall where people get murdered. It's a gross out, bloody slasher movie that is self-aware. It is fun. In 80s movies, shopping malls were the place to be across the board. I don't know why. They really don't have scenes that take place in shopping malls anymore. In fact, I can't remember the last time I was even in a shopping mall. However, Chopping Mall is a lot of fun. If you like that genre, odds are you've probably seen Chopping Mall, but if you have not, it's well worth watching if you plan on having a little bit of fun with it. And by fun, I mean drinking every time somebody dies. If you're old enough to drink, if you're not old enough to drink, definitely do not, under any circumstances, drink alcohol. You can do something else.
The burden of civilization is on us.
Bitchin', isn't it?
In 1984, a little movie called Night of the Comet came out. And this movie is drenched in 80s cheese and cliches. It is absolutely saturated with it. If that sounds like you, you have to watch this movie. If you've never seen it, like if you like the nostalgia element of Stranger Things more than you like the story and the characters and everything, and you just like that 80s juice you get out of that show, Night of the Comet is overflowing with whatever you want to call that essence, and it's pretty great. Now, just like some of the others, the movie itself kind of sucks, but the experience of watching it really is fun, particularly for anyone that grew up in the 80s or was at least maybe a teenager in the 80s or younger. I think you're really, really going to like this one, but you do have to go into it with the right mindset, which is why I've split this list, because these are the more fun ones. These are the ones that are not really great movies, but they still make good recommendations. Life Force is one I've mentioned enough on the channel. It's getting retired after this episode, but if you're new and you don't know about Life Force, it is a good movie, but it has so many of these cheesy 80s elements as well, so it totally belongs on this list, but it is surprisingly good. It's directed by Tobe Hooper, who is most famous for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original, and then he did this crazy space movie with aliens, and the alien is a smoking hot woman that's completely naked for the entire time she's on screen, and there's bodies getting drained almost like vampires, and there's almost this apocalypse that unfolds throughout the movie, and it just keeps going and going and getting crazier and crazier. I couldn't believe I'd never heard of it the first time I saw it, which was fairly recently. It was like less than a year ago. I love it. I've enjoyed recommending it. If you haven't seen it and you want to get into some just 80s craziness, watch this one first. Now, my only kind of cheat on the list is Total Recall, the 1990 version. I know it's not 80s, but it technically is like an 80s movie. But watch the 90 version, not the 2012 version with Colin Farrell. That one's kind of a decent movie, yet it is not a good remake. It does not embrace any of the things that made the original great. For instance, in the original, they go to fucking Mars. In the remake, they can't be bothered to go to fucking Mars. That is insane. You have a beloved movie where the main characters spend half of the movie on Mars, and then you make a remake without even... I don't even think they mention Mars. Not that that would have done any good, but anyway. Schwarzenegger, by the way, appears 2 more times on this list. And I have a theory about Schwarzenegger that I'm going to reveal as I get to the bottom of the list. But this is a fun one. It's got some great special effects, also some not so great special effects that are still just as enjoyable to watch. And it is a fun action movie. There's a reason they remade it, because it does have a lot of great qualities. This is not what I would consider to be a bad movie that's fun to watch like the others, but it's still feels like one. It fits into that campiness, but it's certainly better than any of the ones I mentioned so far, which is why it's above them on the list. So that was 1990. Now in 1987, Schwarzenegger was in a movie called Running Man. As much as I love Total Recall, Running Man is its own animal, and it is cool. Like, it's in the near future. Well, it's like in the 90s or 2000s. I can't remember the exact year, but it's in the near future from 1987. Things have kind of gone to shit. People are kind of fighting for food, fighting for work, and there is this game where it's a death match. There's a lot of death match movies. There's a lot of great ones. This is one of them. This is a great one. It's got some great one-liners that I absolutely love from Arnold. Like, here, without any context, here's one of my favorites.
But I hope you leave enough room for my fist, because I'm going to ram it into your stomach and break your goddamn spine! Ah!
If you love the show American Gladiator, this is American Gladiator literally on steroids. I mean, Arnold Schwarzenegger was absolutely on steroids, but the movie is also on steroids, and it's all the better because of it.
No sticky, no washy.
Now, 1 year prior, 1986, another movie that is known for being a bad movie, but is it's so fun to watch. They could not get away with making a movie like this today. I'm talking about The Toxic Avenger. If you have never seen The Toxic Avenger, and you are not one of these super sensitive people that get offended by everything, do yourself a favor and watch The Toxic Avenger. I really don't even want to tell you anything about it, but I will. they also have the rest of the series. They have 2, 3, and 4. Watch those if you love the first, but definitely watch the first. First, it's about a semi-retarded janitor that falls into a vat of toxic chemicals, turns into a super strong freak that is able to rip people apart with his bare hands, which he does, including some rowdy teenagers that love running people over so much they actually have a bingo board for hitting animals, children, people in wheelchairs. That's the type of movie you're dealing with. Not only is it supremely self-aware, it is a laugh a minute. It is so tight in terms of humor and gags and laughs without really being 100% a comedy. It's just a wild ride. It's one of my favorites on this entire list.
Plan 9 from outer space, one night only, the big screen. My hands are tied.
Now, at the beginning of the video, I told you it was going to be 20 and then it's actually like closer to 30. That's because some of these movies have multiple sequels, like I just mentioned, but also multiple versions. Plan 9 from Outer Space is one of the most famous campy movies. It's an Ed Wood movie, and it is so much fun. It's about vampires from outer space, and it's shot horribly, but in the most entertaining way possible. It is an absolute classic in this genre. It's the classic in this genre. The cool thing about what Amazon Prime has right now is they have the original black and white. They have it in color, which is one I recommend. They have a RiffTrax version, which is the guys from Mystery Science Theater 3000, so they comment on it. That's a fun way to watch it after you watch the original or the color version. And then they have it's hard to put that, it's so hard to put that fourth finger up. So I'm going to switch, if you watch, I'm going to switch from my thumb to all 4 of these. And then they have a RiffTrax Live, which I don't really recommend so much unless you just really love those guys, because you do sort of see them on screen at the same time. It's kind of distracting, but there's hours of entertainment with this one movie, and it is worth it. Again, if I were to watch 2, and I do recommend 2, it would be the color version, because black and white doesn't add too much to it, except you feel like you were watching it originally in the movie theater. The color almost makes it worse, which is why you should watch it. And then the RiffTrax version is just a lot of fun. A lot of good jokes and gags at the movie's expense. I love watching movies that way, so check them out. Let me know which one you plan on watching in the comments below, but let's move on to my top picks. Return of the Living Dead is an amazing zombie movie with some just really fun elements, including the Tar Man. It's a zombie that comes out of a vat of tar. He looks crazy. You've got this crazy gang with all these weird kind of crazy costumes. You've got smoke machines and zombie hands coming up out of, grave sites in front of headstones, and it's just that it's 80s rock and roll and zombies is what this movie is, and it's fun. It's not just garbage thrown together with this like shellac of 80s shit on it. It is got a story that you can follow. It's a great piece of 90-minute entertainment and just an absolute classic. And for some weird reason, they don't have the second one, but they have the third. If you're really into the first, watch the third, but don't watch the third first and then the first. Just don't do it. And again, my top pick, Terminator. Not a bad movie at all. Some people would say this one's better than Terminator 2. I think those people are crazy. I think Terminator 2 is possibly the best action movie ever made. However, the original Terminator is fucking great. Great. And here's my theory. This one came out in 1984. Arnold Schwarzenegger seems to, with very few exceptions, seems to get better with age. Meaning, the older the movie is, the better it is. That's certainly true with a lot of his movies, again, with a handful of exceptions. But the more recent his movies are, including the latest Terminator, just the worse they are. I would say, if you never bothered to watch Terminator, odds are you're one of my younger viewers. This is my top pick off of the entire list. It's not just an 80s movie. It is a sci-fi classic. It's early James Cameron in the director's chair, who's gone on to be one of the most impressive sci-fi directors of all time. Really nails that craft, and this is kind of the early stages of it, and he was so gifted and talented with sci-fi, even at early stages of his career. So it's a must-watch for anybody that considers himself to be a movie lover. You have to watch it. I'm honestly surprised Amazon Prime has it. So if you don't currently have Amazon Prime, hopefully this video helped you out by determining that there is some good content there. It can be hard to find because it's mixed in with paid movies so much, but hopefully this content helps you filter through that and get some good picks. Hopefully you're well entertained for a little bit. Plenty more videos coming up in the near future. If you want to support the channel, you can do so a number of ways, but honestly, the biggest amount of help you could give me right now is by subscribing to my podcast channel. I'm trying to break 1,000 subscribers ASAP so I can begin to monetize and grow that channel. It's going well. I've got some incredible guests lined up in the coming months. So just go over there, subscribe, click the bell, and then you'll start to see some really cool guests, and we're doing some fun things over there, and there'll be more and more of that coming out. But I will continue making these as long as you keep watching them. Thanks for checking out this episode, and you will see me on the next one.